Hello, this is Jordan back with another look at a custom book. Today we are looking at my custom bind for Rick Veitch, Swamp Thing and Other Tales. This takes a look at a survey of his career, but with an emphasis on Swamp Thing work, because that is a lot of what's out there. This piece is actually from very recently. This is for his upcoming Swamp Thing conclusion, the much anticipated. But yeah, Rick Veitch is one of my all-time favorite artists. I've been a big fan for a long time. I, first became acquainted with him through his Swamp Thing work, but later on would dig into Brat Pack and the Max Immortal stuff and the Epic Comic stuff and his underground work. And luckily this book is able to cover a scope of that to some degree. Like I said, there's a big emphasis on Swamp Thing stuff because that's a lot of what's out there. But I was able to find a smattering of pages from other work over the years. My favorite of which, the highlight, being all of Two-Fisted Zombies. I was able to find the original art for the famous underground comic that he did with his brother Tom. But jumping right in, we go into the Swamp Thing work. Technically with a DC Presents Superman story, but Swamp Thing's in it. But you get these collaborations that he was doing with Stephen Bissette while him and John Totleben were heading up art on the Swamp Thing title. Stephen Bissette has said in interviews before that he actually does not really like drawing superheroes, so he would often call his buddy Rick over to have him help assist with those elements. And so here's some examples of those. But we go into Rick Veitch's run proper, and predominantly you're going to see inks by Alfredo Alcala, which I am a big fan of. I think they complement his work really well. I mean, love that splash page. Beautiful. But this is a artist edition I really wanted to put together because I really do greatly admire Rick Veitch's art, and I don't see it celebrated anywhere near as much as it should be. He's incredibly prolific and still working to this day, finishing up his Max Immortal saga, the King Hell Heroica, which he self-publishes on Amazon. I highly recommend checking out. All volumes of the King Hell Heroica saga are available on his store. And he, I believe, just announced that the newest volume is expected for release here in the next month or two. But just the skill and experimental quality that he and Bissette and this gang of folks out of the Hubert School brought to mainstream comics is just stunning looking at in this raw form. I think it's something that people are really kind of coming around to appreciating now as it's been more in discussion. You know, him getting to finish his Swamp Thing run finally has really kind of brought his work back into discussion for a lot of people. But, you know, both as an artist and a writer, his career has been one that I have followed with great enthusiasm. You know, I loved his Aquaman run that he wrote. I loved the Question run that he wrote. I think that he's just really one of those creators that has straddled that line between mainstream comics and the outsider underground world. And I think that's what I love the most about him. I too love both of those things, you know. Just because I love Crumb doesn't mean that I don't love Superman too. And he clearly straddles that himself. I think that it shines through in his work and the boundaries that he pushes with things like his Swamp Thing run, which I guess for those that don't know, culminated famously in a storyline where he was going to have Swamp Thing meet Jesus, and DC got cold feet at the last minute and infamously pulled the plug on the issue, which led to him leaving the title, which led to Neil Gaiman not picking up the title. It was a whole thing. And so it's really nice to see him get some vindication on that all these years later and get to see that work concluded. Because there's a lot of fans out there that have been digging through the internet for decades for any glimpses at what could have been. Get a little Rick Veitch Batman here. One of my favorite spreads in the book. Just stunning work. I mean, spreads are littered throughout his run. They're just unbelievable. Old John Constantine. This is an interesting issue. What's going on here is that Rick Veitch did the center storyline in this issue. They had basically 3 storylines running concurrently with each page, and Rick Veitch would do the middle one with art, and the top and bottom were done by Brett Ewins. And this page is Ewan's original art with Rick Veitch's paste up of his art for the center, and then you can see for the following pages that he was doing his original art as just that center strip, hence why it was pasted up in that first one. But yeah, I've got several concurrent pages of the sequence that he did running as one giant strip. So if you laid all these out side by side, they run as one massive image. It's really masterful work. It reminds me of a similar piece that he did in Epic Illustrated. It's a 5-pager where all 5 pages come together to make a single image of a spaceship. Really neat. I also love that these pages have all of these special titles written in. They're pretty good. Swampy River. Some other Swamp Thinky, Swamp Think, Swampy Dumpy, Swamp Thawing, Swamp Python, Swampfany. Good stuff. So we draw to the close of the Swamp Thing work. Get these cool elements for the cover come together. I think there's another example of that here in a minute. But I'm really hoping that with his run getting concluded and a 3rd trade paperback collecting that given a little time, DC will give him the same omnibus treatment that they have been doing with a lot of other creators for good old Swamp Thing. this is kind of an embarrassing one. I found this page that the internet attributed to him and Alfredo Alcala, but Rick Veitch was kind enough to tell me himself that he actually did not do this. Alfredo's inks, yes, but not his pencils. So I had already printed and bound the book at that point, so these embarrassing mistakes remain. But it is a really cool Alfredo Alcala piece, in fairness. So yeah, then we jump into my smattering of other Rick Veitch stuff I was able to find. And like I said before, this was my favorite. I'm a huge fan of Two-Fisted Zombies, and so finding the original art for the whole thing was just a very welcome surprise. Very influential underground comic. You hear a lot of artists bring it up as something that was very inspiring to them. This one's a curiosity, though. This is the only page that wasn't the original art wasn't accessible for, and I wondered if it was maybe done later or what the story was behind that, but I'm not sure, because there are actually 2 pages that were cut from the final piece that I was able to find as well. But Two-Fisted Zombies, for those that are interested, is currently in print in Rick Veitch's Bong Comics trade paperback, which has a lot of his early underground stuff and collaborations with his brother. I cannot recommend it enough. As I've said multiple times in this video, I can't recommend Rick Veitch's work enough. His Amazon store has made so much of it easily available. It's all super affordable. You got classic works, you've got new stuff, you've got his experimental stuff, like the, what are they called? His new format where they're single panel pages. I'll remember what it's called in a minute. But it's all available, it's all very affordable. You can even buy stuff from his website as well, and I'll put links for both in the description for this video. But he sells several things on his website as well, which you can get directly from him, which I always recommend doing when you can. Supporting artists directly is the best way to make sure that they actually see your dollar. Yeah, Two-Fisted Zombies. What a trip. I mean, look at that. But then hopping out of Two-Fisted Zombies. Oh, and here's those 2 pages that were unpublished, that were drawn for Two-Fisted Zombies as well. The splash page of Total Combat with the Rooskies. And because I'm immature, I blew up this panel for no particular reason, of course. Sergeant Rock, which I believe Stephen Bissett said this was his first professional collaboration with Rick Veitch. And then their infamous collaboration on 1941, The Illustrated Story. For those that aren't familiar, don't look up anything. Just go buy a copy online and read it. There's nothing like it, and it will never be reprinted. It is a wild comic, and you can see here all painted on board. This is true collaboration with Stephen Bissett. I have very little clue where one's work begins and the other ends, but yeah, like I said, this is one that is not going to be reprinted, but it is readily available on places like eBay for pretty cheap, so you can get a copy still. I don't know, there's a ton of demand for it, but it is, a true oddity, and I can easily say that I recommend it more than the movie. I rewatched that movie recently for its anniversary. It's alright. It's pretty weak. But the comic I recommend heartily. And some of his Marvel graphic novel work, cover here. Scout, famous Timothy Truman comic. Cover for one of the, this was for the comic scoreboard in reference to what was going on with the 1963 line, the famously unfinished comic that he collaborated with Stephen Bissett and Alan Moore on. And some Turtles work. Some Supreme, which is another Alan Moore collaboration that I would love to see collected better for people. I have a custom bind of that whole run, and it is fantastic comics. And then I've got the entirety of this Tomorrow Stories story. This really neat POV driving through the city. And then this Fantastic Four collab with Eric Larson layouts and Al Williamson inks. Pretty neat. And that does it for the Rick Veitch Artist Edition. As always, thank you guys for sticking around and checking out the book.